Sorry. I'm going to call the policy meeting to order. Didn't mean to scare everybody. Sorry about that. I was channeling my inner Pete Wildebohr. That's what I was doing. Very aggressive. All right. Ms. Kadetsky, will you call the roll?
Melissa Mason,
Here.
Dr. Merrick,
Yeah, here.
Pat Bradford.
I am here.
All right. We have an in-person invocation today, and that is going to be done by, Pastor Mike Ashcraft of Port City Community Church, and then following that, I will lead us in the pledge. So, go right ahead. Turn it on.
Well, thank y'all for standing up. I'm going to try to do this like this. But it is, I guess, odd for an in-person invocation, but I just wanted to say, what you guys do, I'm sure behind the scenes in a million ways is so important for our community. And I personally just feel like it's a way for us to really honor what you guys do by showing up and being in the room with you guys for at least a few minutes. And so it's an honor to be able to pray for you guys, so if you'll join me. Father, I do thank you for the day. I pray for the men and women gathered here and the weight that they feel from both their personal responsibility, I'm sure the pressure from a million different places outside. And they work for the good of our community, for our teachers, for our administrators, our students, the parents. I pray for the discernment and wisdom for them. I pray for meaningful and authentic cooperation that is not tainted by fear and all the pressure that just tends to come with positions like this and responsibilities like this. And I ask, Father, for just a fresh sense of vision for the dignity and worth of what they are entrusted with, for those who teach, to empower the children, to bring dignity and honor the dignity and worth of each child in our community. And I just pray, Father, we recognize that good public schools are good for all of us. And I pray that they would become a place of belonging in such a way that each student can become the very person they've been created and intended to be. And that these schools would work to close all the gaps that create most of the tension and pressure in service to all of our children and for the good of our community and the flourishing of it. And I pray all these things in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, next up, the approval of the agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
moved.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 3-0. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Having not been at the previous meeting, I do not believe I'm the one to.
Okay, I will move. I have read them.
Okay, and I will second that. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes 3-0. All right, so these are all policies that we have either voted on or had some discussions behind the scenes about. And so the first one is policy 2300, which is just at this point under regular meetings, changing the statement that says the meeting will not last more than 4 hours to the meeting will not last more than 3.5 hours. So I will make a motion that we pass this on to the board.
Second.
I second that.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. That was easy. The next one I think is going to take a little longer. So we have 2230. There's a couple things on this particular policy that we had talked about changing or that have been talked about changing in previous policy committee meetings. But we'll start from the top under the number 5, Employee Benefits and Retention Committee. This was submitted to Mr. Blanchard by the individual who created this committee as a summary. And so if there's anything Mr. Blanchard would like to add.
I did want to add one thing. I hobbled this together based on his description on one of the board members' descriptions of their goals for the policy for that particular committee. With one minor exception, I think that the version that I was looking at suggested that the employee members of the committee should be chosen by, you know, the board members sitting on the committee, and I modified that just as a suggestion after conferring with the administration to say the superintendent, you know, just so that we keep that clear line of demarcation between the elected folks and the administration in there.
Perfectly appropriate.
Madam Chair?
Ms. Bradford?
And I would agree with that because it's how we created the Finance Committee. I asked Dr. Barnes for his suggestions, and that's what we went with.
I believe there's a, Madam Chair,
Yes, Dr.
I
Merrick.
do believe that there's a question at hand about whether there should be a standing committee or an ad hoc committee or an advisory committee. And I would say from my point of view that it doesn't seem to be appropriate to be a standing committee. It's not something, it's a short-term, it's really like a discovery about what we can and cannot create. I don't think it's something that's going to continue in perpetuity. And I don't also think that it's an advisory committee, because an advisory committee is chaired by the staff, it's driven by the staff, and I don't know that the staff has asked for this committee. I think this is something that's come wholly out of the imagination of the board, and I think it would be appropriate to be therefore an ad hoc committee.
And if I might, in the description, it even says the committee is advisory in nature. So I would have to agree with my colleague that I don't know as it belongs in standing. And we did talk about this back in February when this was first voted on, and we didn't ever come to any kind of conclusion, just moved it forward to policy to kind of discuss. And so I'm in agreement with my colleague that I don't believe it necessarily belongs in board standing, but it's, you know, will of the board where we decide to place it. So, Ms. Bradford?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I will agree too. It's one thing in the heat of a meeting to say, oh, I think it belongs here, but when you read this from start to finish, some things pop out. And I have another housekeeping item for this before we leave it. Don't let me forget that. But when you read the purpose and then you see the committees that are stacked under standing, and then you drop down to advisory, some of our really important committees are under advisory. The calendar committee, chaired by Dr. Hamilton, you know, it's extremely necessary. It's advisory, and I sat on that till I didn't get on this time, but I learned a lot from it. But also, she chairs the curriculum committee. Curriculum committee is advisory. There is no more important committee than we have. So if curriculum is advisory, then I think this one could be. You could persuade me to go to ad hoc. I don't know if you could persuade me to say it's a one-time deal. Ad hoc has always been in my impression, you're here for this one task and it's going to take this amount of time, and when it's over, it's over. So you could possibly persuade me that, but I don't think it needs to be a monthly standing committee. Absolutely no way. Finance is not even a monthly standing committee. We didn't meet more than 10 times last year. We took 2 months off. And as we get through the bond process, as we get through the budget process, we're going to slide into bonds, so we might meet the next 12 months solid. But after that, it depends on what the agenda is. It may be this technology survey situation that we're looking, not technology, excuse me, what's the word I'm looking for? Infrastructure, sustainability. It may be that, but it ebbs and flows, so I don't believe it should be standing. Now, y'all can convince me ad hoc or advisory. Thank you, Madam Chair. And you want me to tell you about other issue? When you read through this from start to finish, it talks about attendance at some of the committees, but not attendance at other committees. So I think if we just skip this housekeeping issue straight down to the bottom, under item number 5, board committee expectations. I think we just need to put a 5 there and put the same language that is in some of these, but not all of these. And it says, where is it? It's at least in 2 of them. What
First
the
2.
expectation is on attendance. Attendance is mandatory to remain on this committee. So I think that should be for all committees, and we just make that number 5. Doesn't have to be in each individual one at that point. So I will make a motion for that, or at least whoever makes the motion for this, tail it into that. Either way.
I would second that.
Okay, so the motion is
Oh, okay.
to add a number, well, there is a number 5, so it would probably
No,
have
it'd
to.
be 5-5.
There's already a number 5 there.
Oh,
There's a
wait.
couple of them.
There's, yeah.
Oh, no, sorry. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, this is 5 board expectations.
Okay.
And there's
then
1, 2,
adding
3,
it.
4, so it'd be the 5th one.
Nope, there's 3 more on the on that
Yeah.
next page.
Oh, whoops.
So it'd
okay.
be number 8,
Yeah,
if we keep all of these.
sorry, you're right.
So the motion is to add verbiage, I'm looking for it. There's so many pages.
Attendance is mandatory to remain on this committee
Attendance is mandatory to remain on committees.
and council, because some of them are councils and some of them are committees.
I'm writing it, so. All right, so there is a first and a second to add attendance is mandatory to remain on committees to,
It's a little vague, though. How much, like every single meeting, or there's a number of meetings that
Regular
one can
attendance?
miss?
Mandatory means you need to show up.
I would say probably regular attendance.
But it's in 2 of them now. I'm not creating new language. I'm just saying, if it's in 2, it needs to be in all. So it's consistent. I don't want to change the language.
Would regular be more sufficient to have a, that way it's not saying
It's
you
r-
have to be at every single one, because we know that there are sometimes exigent circumstances that can
Exactly.
come up. But I do know that having served on some of these advisory committees, that there is attendance stipulations. If you miss more than 3, they ask you to
That's a
Yes.
third of the year.
step, right. So how do, I guess, how do we want to define that? Sure, Dr. Barnes?
My standing expectation for principals is if you have something student-related, safety-centered at your school, you don't come to a meeting.
Mhm.
So I know that we'll deal with that as it comes, but just for the school system staff in meetings, they're going to always pick student safety first.
Absolutely.
So that is a thing for some of them.
Well, there is such a thing as illness. There is
Mhm.
other types
Well,
of
there's
things,
always
right?
exceptions, but if you say it's mandatory, then you put the pressure on the committee member to actually show up or speak to the committee chair and/or the board
Mhm.
chair to say, hey, I missed because of this reason. But we
Mhm.
do have board members who don't show up for their committees. I'm in my 4th year. We do have board members who don't show up for their committees. And I chair a committee, and if I had somebody who missed 2 meetings in a row, I'm going to want to call them and say, hey, we're covering really important stuff. What's going on? And in the beginning, when we founded, we had a hard time getting some people to serve in that committee. It wasn't the piece of cake that it looks like now, outside of the staff that had to. That was a told thing, but we requested members of the community to make up that community service. And in the beginning, there was 1 or 2 people that missed, and I almost said, hey, are you really committed to this? So if I'd had this language, it would have said, hey, my policy says, let's talk about why you haven't been here. So that's kind of, I think all chairs deserve that ability to work it out. But when you say it's mandatory, then there's always an exception to a rule. But if you say 2 meetings or 3 meetings, then you handicap the chair to do what they need to do.
Mayor?
My concern simply is anytime we put something in policy, now it's enforceable.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we say mandatory, it doesn't necessarily, I agree with you. I think we would all say, oh, you're sick, of course, that's an excused absence.
Hmm?
But if it says mandatory, someone could pull that out and say, you missed that one meeting and, you're off. And
Well-
I'm just trying to avoid that sort of,
Well, ACES has it now. There's at least 2. And that inconsistency just jumped right out at me.
is there a clause in there that says an unexcused absence, or?
So it's under both ACES and calendar, but I don't see it under any other ones, and it may.
Yeah, again, calendar would be one, you shouldn't miss a meeting. Yeah, it's only a couple a year.
That's
so,
right.
You know, so
Well, and-
that was my thinking.
And I know advisory has their own set of
Policies, yeah.
policies and procedures that they do, as well as gifted advisory also has their own bylaws and things like that. And so that may have come from some of the bylaws that they had already established.
I would be in favor of saying that attendance is mandatory, except for in, certain circumstances, in case of illness or whatever. I mean, we're making it clear that we expect you to be there unless there's a darn good reason you're not there.
Mr. Blanchard?
With absent, just the phrase right at the beginning of it, absent exigent circumstances from attendance is mandatory to annual meetings.
I could do that.
I can do that.
I could do that.
Takes a lawyer to really say this the right way, doesn't it?
There's some big words there.
We sound smart.
25-cent words.
Yeah, it's
That's what he paying the big bucks for.
All right, so, do
Can
you
we add
want
that to the motion?
Can you read that out?
Do you want to amend that, like, to say
Yes,
absent exigent?
I moved to amend what the board attorney said, which I cannot repeat.
Absent as exigent circumstances, attendance is mandatory to remain on committees.
Yes.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That passes 3-0.
And
So
Madam
go-
Chair,
That's the
before we
amendment.
leave that
And now
section.
we
The
have to go
amendment.
back.
So we have to go back and vote on adding that to the policy.
That's
Thank you.
number 8. right?
Yep. So any discussion on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 3-0. Now, there's other,
Yes.
we do still need to address this Employee Benefits and
Yes.
Retention Committee. Is there any such motion
Oh,
to?
wait, ma'am, before we do, why don't we just stay right where we are? Because number 7 is in red, which tells me it's new. And I have some concerns about number 7 in that same section. Members of committees, other than employees and staff, should be residents of New Hanover County. Members of committees, other than employees and staff, should be residents of New Hanover County. And I don't know the motive behind that. And when I think about it in terms of the committee that I chair, I have one person I need to ask, because it didn't matter to me where they lived, as long as they were subject matter expert, I needed them on the committee. So I would table that part until we find out, do we have people who live outside the county on any of our committees? Because if we don't know that fact, how can we put that into the policy?
I can speak to that, Madam Chair, that I
Go
have
ahead.
been on committees that do have members that are outside of the county. And it's also, I think when you ask about motivation, I know that part of the motivation that brought this was that the city council has this in their policies and the county commissioners has this in their
Yeah, really?
policies. It seemed to be, consistency across the county, and I think it does speak a little bit to having local input. And, sometimes issues in other counties or other parts of the state may not reflect the concerns that we have locally.
And I think also to the point of making sure that we're also protecting, because we do know some of our staff do not live within the county, so making sure that that stipulation is in there as well, that we're protecting them, that they can be a part of it, because we want them to be a part of it. I think that's important to have in there.
So, but could we maybe between now and our general meeting find out if, where we stand with all of our committees, not just one? And I have to find out on mine, because it was never something that mattered to me, in terms of where they lived. So before I can vote on this, I need to know how many committees have residents that are living outside. And if somebody lives in another state, that's another whole deal. That's another whole deal. But, if they lived in Pender, they lived in Brunswick, that might, if they just remember we had a case one time when this family just moved 1 mile over the border, so to me, that would be important. Can we get information between now and next week on our committees? And do we have, I mean, there's a board liaison to every, there's a board staffer to every committee. The staffer should know or be able to send out an inquiry and get back an instant reply. So we should be able to do it in a week, right?
Mr. Barnes, you want to speak to that? Because it's your people.
I mean, do you know?
Kinda. I don't necessarily feel comfortable asking staff where they live.
I wouldn't say
because-
staff.
Oh, no, we're committee members. And this says excluding employees and staff, so you're
Yeah.
safe.
Staff are excluded from this.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah,
excluded.
so, just playing devil's advocate.
Mhm.
If I have, we invite Eric Cradle to be a part of our finance committee
Mm.
because of the role he does and the job he has.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's necessarily relevant where he lives.
Correct.
So I don't know, I mean, what's the purpose in opening the door? I think that if you're going to say something like, if you are a parent on the committee, you have to have a child in the school system. I think that's appropriate.
Sure.
I think that if you're someone who, like, so I would think it's more relevant the job they do versus where they live. And I think if you want to say, if you're a parent representative, you are a parent of the school system. I think that's reasonable.
Mhm.
And then that would take care of that problem.
I can appreciate that. I think with finance, it's definitely a different arena, but like when it comes to, I'm just trying to think of like some of the different committees that we're on, that it may, I mean, that
The
that's
ACES committee, if I'm an
ACES or,
advocate for special education students, do I have to live in the county to be
No.
a part of that?
but also the laws and procedures are different based on state. So if it's a different state, or, if you know what I'm saying? So
Sure.
I think with things like finance, it's not super unreasonable to think, oh, an expert in finance is an expert in finance, is an
Right,
expert
right,
in
right.
finance. But when you have somebody in like a more specified field that isn't in our area, knowing the past and the procedure and the, you know, or even being invested, or, I think that that kind of could draw some concern. Yay? No? I'm just throwing that out there. Ms. Bradford?
And Madam Chair, I would agree with you. Would it help y'all's reasoning if it said something like the surrounding tri-county area? Because again, I'm not gonna wanna get somebody that's an expert in Boone
Right.
to
That
come
wouldn't
here.
make
I'm
sense.
definitely not gonna go out of state for somebody. But I might not even go to the Charlotte Mech area because it's not the same as us.
No.
But if they live Brunswick Pender, I would be. So I'm not sure what the intent here is. I think it's a good intent, but I'm not sure the unintended consequences like Dr. Barnes is talking about. We could pass it and then have pop up with somebody that's on a committee that we really need to keep, or, I don't know.
Madam Chair?
Dr. Merritt?
Case in point, we might have some of those things pop up, and I would point out that the phrasing here says should be residents. In other words, it is not
Oh.
mandatory. So in which case, why do we even have it?
Right.
Is this something we've created, not something from the NCSBA?
This is something
No,
we
Miss-
created.
One of our board members
A
suggested.
board member brought it forward.
If I understand it, a board member was concerned about the activity in one of the committees that seemed to be, they wanted to narrow the scope of who was having input.
If the person's not the chair, then the chair could deal with that. But if we have somebody that doesn't live in New
Certainly
Hanover.
the will of the board. If you would like me to do that, I can certainly delegate that on. Eye contact, everybody. I can certainly delegate that on.
Not one of them looked up.
Yeah, of
Not-
course, yeah.
not what- oh.
But if you guys, I mean, obviously, if this goes through and then gets to the board and gets approved, then we will, of course, do that. Just making sure you don't accidentally cut off your nose to spite your face.
Yeah, and I would, right now, I'd be in favor of just removing this until we get more information. I'm not saying I wouldn't be willing next month to come back and look at that, but I kind of need more information to be able to do that.
Okay.
So I would move that we remove currently number 7, and then the next one comes up to 7. Remove this, that we table that discussion on that till the next meeting. Let's do that. Let's remove that part of it. We're going to keep going on everything else we're doing, but that part of it, and we'll know by then whether we want to talk about it next month or not.
That's fine with me. I'll
Yeah.
second that.
Also, some of these committees,
Oh, we haven't even gotten through all the committees.
because some of the committees aren't necessarily run by us, we are
Right.
members of.
Correct.
Right.
That is no, I mean, if it's the policy committee, obviously, we have influence over that, but if it's a committee like,
The advisory
Gifted
committee.
advisory.
right, where we're not really
Right.
in charge of that, that is another wrinkle to consider.
Right.
And gifted is a...
That's advisory.
Advisory.
All right, so the motion is to table that particular sentence until the next meeting. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes 3-0.
Now
So
the meat and potatoes.
we do have a couple of things. I'll go with the simpler one first. Sustainability Committee. So I am going to move that we take the last sentence of that paragraph out. It says additionally, one board member will serve on the Soil and Water Conservation Committee. I'm going to move that we remove that
I
sentence.
will second that.
Pardon me, point of inquiry, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure where you, oh, you're talking about the.
Number
Number
9.
nine.
The blue.
It's page 26 on the paper.
The blue instead of the red, which I
blue.
overlooked
These
because it was blue.
pages aren't numbered on our computer.
They're not
Number
numbered
9.
on the computer, but I have numbers on my pages.
Yeah,
So,
Sustainability Committee.
and if I might just kind of talk, like, just briefly about it, at this point, the purpose that when we initially joined the Soil and Water Conservation Committee, that was to kind of start the ball rolling on the sustainability initiatives within the district. Once we started the Sustainability Committee, and now that we're doing some more digging and learning more about what we have, we want to make sure that we're definitely keeping that focus on the district. So we do not currently have any members on the Soil and Water Conservation Committee. So that's why I feel we need to remove it. So,
Is there a reason we want to, and this is just a total inquiry, why was the decision to have 2 on the Sustainability Committee?
that was a,
Because we had 2 at the time.
no.
No?
Initially, the Sustainability Committee was created with one board member participating. That was me. I can say that. I helped start this. And so with the removal of the soil and water, I believe that another board member had asked to add that verbiage in there so that we had two individuals, because we don't have the soil and water having 2 people that are able to add their input and their resources. I think that was
But we
the-
do have one person, if we approve this, we will have one board member on the Soil and Water.
No. Removing, I'm saying remove that.
Oh, you're suggesting you to
Yes.
remove that last state, that
Yes.
last.
Yes, take it out.
Yes.
Delete it. Strike it.
It's not
Strike,
clear
that's
to me,
the word.
reading this with blue and what's removed and what's not, so thank you for
Yes,
the
so
clarity.
striking the additionally one board member will serve on soil and water. So we at present don't have anyone serving on soil and water. So,
Gotcha.
And in part, that was also because we're trying to pull in some of the experts within the county. At present, we have the county sustainability manager. We have people that are doing some county initiatives that are on the committee already. And so double dipping just didn't seem necessary. So, the motion is to strike, additionally, one board member will serve on the Soil and Water Conservation Committee. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That passes 3-0. All right, back to the initial.
The bigger one.
The
meat and
initial.
potatoes.
What do we want to do with the Employee Benefits and Retention Committee?
Let's start, right, is the title now correct? And does the title now match what we voted on last meeting? Or did we actually vote on it last meeting to change the title?
I think we voted to bring it here.
The title?
No, the whole policy.
Yeah, I'm just, because I think the board approved another committee with another title. And so we need to deal with that issue to officially change the title to this, if I'm correct.
I'm gonna
I
go
ghosted
to-
these meetings, but I wasn't a member for this last year.
I'm going to go to the agenda for when we voted, which was the February regular meeting, because that's where the title will be. And it says on Old Business Employee Retention Committee.
Okay.
So we have the benefits in there. I'm not, and I don't have the paperwork that that individual had sent to us presently with me.
I don't have it presently with me either, but I remember from the meeting that what we did is strike his original
Okay.
request
You're right,
for
you're
a
right.
committee and took it completely off the board and began anew
Okay.
with this one.
All right. It's just a housekeeping thing. So have we determined then next, have we said, we haven't reached a conclusion whether it's going to be advisory or ad hoc, and y'all are going to present your arguments and try to change my mind or sway me in some way, although you could do it without me.
Well, I'd rather not be a persuasion. I'm hoping that we all can sort of collaborate
Just like to
and
hear
come
your
up with
arguments
something.
why it should be, and you're advocating for ad hoc?
I'm asking for ad hoc. Ad hoc does not mean a one-off. It does mean that it's temporary in nature. It doesn't go on into perpetuity. It might last for 5 years, but it's not, it's not a forever thing. I don't believe it belongs in advisory because that's driven by staff, and I have not heard anything that says the staff is driving this. And it would be kind of awkward to show up and say, okay, staff, what do you got? And you're like, hey, this wasn't our idea. Be kind of funny. And I don't think it needs to be standing for the very reason that it's not, I don't believe it should go into perpetuity. And I think in my mind, and in talking with my colleague who is pushing for this, it seems to be more of an exploration than anything else, because we know it's a long shot. And I'm in favor of doing the exploration because I think it might show up giving us ideas in other areas. But I don't know that it's a standing committee.
And just to kind of go back to the original, the title, under the supporting documents, I'm looking at the February regular meeting, it says Employee Benefits and Retention Committee as the document. So that is the name. But looking at the definition and what we have here for the board ad hoc committees, it feels like this falls into it a lot more. It says, as time and situations demand, ad hoc committees may be created by the chairperson with the approval of the board. The chairperson assigns up to 3 board members, to serve on the ad hoc committee. Additional committee membership is determined depending on the nature of the committee, which is what that says. Ad hoc committees are temporary and formed for a specific purpose. There's definitely a specific purpose, and ad hoc committees have no final authority and are subordinate and advisory to the board, also noted in there. And so it says the board clerk will maintain a list of ad hoc committees. So typically, obviously, we don't have a list of the board ad hoc committees on policy. So what it would mean is if we move it to an ad hoc committee, we would, in my opinion, remove it from this particular policy.
Yeah, and Madam Chair, we did that when remember we had,
The
Mr. McManus
safety.
and I served on that.
The safety committee.
Yeah, it was safety that brought us all the changes and
Mhm.
stuff. Yes, and when we added it, and then when we ended it, we took it out.
Correct.
So you do have a good point there. I'd kind of like to hear what the super says. Super says?
Super is just landed in Switzerland.
It's a good place to be.
I think, for me, this is one of those things that it's at will of the board. I'm going to say that it's always essential for someone to be keeping their eye on retention and employee satisfaction. I think that obviously that's been a real focus for the past couple of years. I don't want us to get tied up too much in thinking that this is only a budgetary solution item. So Ms. Geller, soon to be Dr. Geller, and I have talked, and there's a committee that Ashley has, there's a committee that Rob has, there's a curriculum committee. HR doesn't really have a committee that represents it. So if that's the will of the board, that's certainly fine. Whether it's ad hoc or whether it's permanent, I think you guys have to decide what the temperature of the district is, right?
And I think that's an important part of that decision-making process.
Huh. So, let me see if I interpret that right. If it went to advisory, Ms. soon-to-be Dr. Geller
I didn't know that. That's
could be
amazing.
the person.
Soon is in quotes, though, right? I
The
mean,
person,
yeah.
the person just,
Get our ducks
you know,
together.
shepherding the committee. That has a lot of appeal to me. It really does. Because I see how Ashley does, because I work closely with her, and I see how Dr. Hamilton does, because I work closely with her on the committees, and it's a really important part that they play in it. So that would put me back to looking at advisory. And again, to your point, colleague across, this could be more than just a short-term ad hoc thing, because it's an ongoing problem from generation to generation. The problems evolve. When we started finance, we didn't, well, Pete just assigned me to finance when I got elected, so, but it evolved into what it is now, and it took us pretty much 3 years to get to there. So the evolving was great, but it couldn't have done it without, you know, the staff that hold it together. So I would, based on what he just said, I'd be more interested in
Shifting it to advisory.
shifting it to advisory. And if it doesn't work, we can always come back and redo it. But you're right, it's all about your department. These are your people. Our people, but your people. Yeah.
Just a
But-
little side note, Rob's done a great job of leading as well, the committee.
I don't
I didn't
serve-
want him to feel left out.
I don't serve on any of his
Yeah,
committees.
I know, but he's done a great job.
But who
Dr.
knows,
Mary?
maybe next year. Actually, that's true, because he plays a huge part in finance, capital, and bond. He really does.
Dr. Merritt.
I think, and I'm just kind of going by what I believe I have seen, which was that the original intent of this, brought on by Mr. Perry, was he wanted to create a bonus structure of some kind for staff. That was the original intent. I like what I'm hearing from my colleague across the way and Ms. Geller and the superintendent, that this can go far beyond that original intention. And if that intention was about awarding staff, then it certainly could go well beyond the monetary. And I did notice that there was a lot of friction amongst folks about whether or not a monetary reward was appropriate. Certainly, we don't have the money within our budget for that, and it would have to come from the outside. But I do really like what I'm hearing about, even if the original intent was monetary, it is inside of a greater purpose of retention. And so if we broaden that for the use of this committee, then it would actually fit very nicely under an advisory committee. And I could be persuaded. I should probably find out if you want to shoot me
Ms.
now for
Geller?
having said that.
No.
She's smiling. She's not looking down.
I love the idea, and I think to Dr. Barnes's point, part of keeping a pulse on retention, recruitment and retention, you know, an example I might give you is, you know, I think if you think about it generationally, right, many of us, and maybe even more so in more, you know, northern states where there are unions and things like that, people were career teachers. That's what you did as a career for your life. We don't see that being the case anymore, right? So I think that has resulted for several years now in how we have to adjust our recruiting strategy, right? So now we're seeing 5 years as a tipping point for some, right? So we can either adjust to that and know that our recruiting cycle is different, as well as our retention strategies now change. And so I think having that information about what our workforce is doing, how things are changing for our teacher prep programs, what our incoming staff look like, I think having more of an advisory like that would be very helpful, along with ways that outside of financially compensating, how could we expand those things around our community? And it is a community who, I love to say, love their teachers. This community, Wilmington, loves their teachers. So what are some other ways that they can wrap their arms around our teachers and employees overall? So I welcome the idea. I think it's exciting.
Okay, Ms. Bradford?
All of a sudden, I got excited about this. And you know, I've been like the least excited of everybody on the board, but now I'm excited. So I'm going to throw out a motion. So let's see if I can get through it. I'm going to move that we take employee benefits and retention and move it down under advisory. And then we amend paragraph 2 and we strike the language there where it says the committee will consist of to mirror the consistency of advisory committees. And it will be under the direction of Human Resources Assistant Superintendent Jen Geller. And I think that covers what I'm trying to do.
Could I amend that to remove the name, just because the
Yeah, we don't
policy
want
should
the name.
persist with or without Ms. Geller? We hope that she never
Oh, yeah,
leaves,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
we
yeah,
don't want to
yeah,
have that
under
part of
Human
policy.
Resources. Yeah,
Sounds
yeah.
like a threat.
Hey, no, we want her forever.
She's going to
No.
stay forever. Forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, that is a smart move, yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So there is a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. So the motion is to move Employee Benefits and Retention Committee to under advisory and edit
Paragraph 2.
paragraph 2 to mirror the consistency with advisory committees. And I can sit down with Ms. Wadetsky if you would like, and we can talk through that. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 3-0. So I'm going to move that we send this amended policy to the board.
Second.
Well, now, discussion. Oh, wait, you need a second on that, don't
She
you?
did.
Oh, she did, okay.
She did.
My discussion simply is that we did not finalize what section, number 7 or whatever it was that we said we'd talk about later, right? Do you want to send it to the policy, send it to the full board as is, without addressing,
We struck that, didn't we?
We said we tabled it until the
We
next meeting.
tabled it.
So, yeah. No, and my motion was
reasonable,
to cut that section out, move this forward with the revisions we just made, and then if we need to come back next meeting and look at that after we do some investigation, then we just put it right back on the agenda to fix that one little thing.
I'll second that.
We already did it.
I know, but I'm still seconding it. You can't take that away from me.
Seconded the second.
No
All right.
problem.
So,
Congratulations, Ms. Geller.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
So we're striking that idea of number 7. That'll have to be started from scratch.
Yeah, it would, if we approve it at our next board meeting, then that new revised policy would come back for another revision.
Right.
All right, so where are we now?
2230 without
We
number
are
7.
on 2310.
I can find it. 2310.
So that's public participation at board meetings.
Oh, that one.
So the changes that were made to that one, when some of the board members went to the NCSBA conference in November, and some of the information that we gathered was that there were some things that are allowed. And so I wanted to kind of reflect that in policy. And so if we look at, I think it's page, for the left, they're all sticking
Page
together.
2.
2 of 3.
Page 2 of 3, so, or page 31 if you're on your paper. We have, under direct comments to the board chair and not to individual members directly, I asked the attorney to add comments must be limited to matters relevant to the work of the board and may not include commercial advertisements or solicitations or comments about issues, activities, or organizations that are unrelated to the board's functions. So, Mr. Blanchard, could you speak, there were some questions that people had about the commercial advertisements and solicitations. Could you speak to that?
I try not to recreate the wheel. I handed out a copy of a Coates Cannon's blog that the late Professor Bluestein had published for the School of Government a few years ago. This is on page 3, rolling on to page 4, about limiting comments to matters related to the unit of government. Actually, it's at the top of page 4. That was the language that she had proposed in the blog post, and I just essentially cut and pasted that. There's nothing magical about that. As I understood it, the idea that we were trying to get to was this germaneness limitation, that we don't want people coming up, as Professor Bluestein's article provides, and talking about their child's birthday party next week at the call to the audience, or going up and making solicitations for whatever businesses or civic organizations that are unrelated to the school board. You're trying to hold this into the school board. Somebody standing up like they do at the Oscars and talking about environmental issues is probably not appropriate for a school board meeting, whether it's a good idea or not.
Relevant to the work of the board. Okay. Dr.
I will wait.
Ms. Bradford?
So my question is probably for Mr. Blanchard. How would this be enforced? Would it be, as we do now,
Point of order.
point of order, Madam Chair, this is not germane, and then the chair rules?
Or just, sua sponte by the chair,
Excuse
just
me?
saying, hey,
He's using big words.
I know.
yeah, on
It's the
their,
second big word of
raised
the
on
day.
their own, own initiative when they see somebody straying out. I mean, part of the problem with that is that people come and talk about things that really are kind of loosely related to it. Some of them you like hearing, some you don't. But it does chew up a lot of time. The other thing is, and this is an argument for not having this language, you don't want policy to be used as a weapon by somebody on the board who disfavors an idea that someone out there is speaking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I
but
don't want to
wouldn't
get any
it-
more.
Wouldn't it, if they objected, then it's going to go to the chair for an opinion, and if they appeal, then it's going to go to the whole board, so that kind of covers that. It's interesting.
Well,
Dr.
I do think that many times parents will come before the board and they want to say, hey, you know what? We don't like maybe the way something's happening, or we don't disagree with something. And it may not be about the business that's before the board, but it is about the schools. And then do we tell them, sorry, that's not business before the board?
And that wasn't the intent. It was purely unrelated matters. The general societal issues.
Well, let me take it
global warming. Whatever. I'm trying to come up with an example like that. Something that really is so unrelated to the education business of the board.
I will, without putting too fine a point on it, I do appreciate one of our public members who comes every month, just about every month, and prays for the board. I like the positivity, generally speaking, if it doesn't get political, which sometimes it does, but I like that, and I could see someone making a very clear argument. That is not about business before the board.
Madam Chair?
Ms. Bradford?
As you know, we discussed this yesterday, because that was my concern. And, as one of my besties, I like what she does, brings a real nice piece to the meeting. But she typically has something that's going on our meeting that she is addressing. She typically does. You may not hear it when she's doing it, but she does. And so if this were to pass, I'm sure that she would have no issues with complying with the language. It's an interesting notion. I objected to it when I walked in the door, but now I'm going to move that we adopt it, see how the whole board feels about it. If it were to pass, Mr. Blanchard, I would love for you to just make some side notes that you discussed with us at some other time that says, you had 3 violations that you could have tightened down on and 1 that you did and you shouldn't have, kind of deal, just to get us the feel legally of where we are.
I was just thinking, if you wanted a more economical way of saying that, you could chop it off at the word board. Comments must be limited to matters relevant to the work of the board, and just get rid of the rest of that long run-on sentence. I mean, that's a simple way to, I think, to get the idea that I'm hearing from the 3 of you here.
But I can remember when we've had people come with their advertisements. I distinctly remember, I can't remember specifically what, but I know it's happened at least 2 or 3 times, and solicitations, in the 5 years I've been looking at this, so it happens. So, and if that's then published on our call to audience info, yeah, we could have more room for regular comments from local people and not solicitations or advertisements. So I'm going to be in favor of leaving it. I'm going to move that we keep it the way it is and see what the whole board says.
I guess I would want to make sure that in my previous example, that if someone is saying,
I'm
hey,
going to pause
this
you.
is.
I'm going to just second that so that we can just keep going. Go ahead. I second. Go ahead.
Oh, you seconded, sorry,
Yeah, yeah.
thank you. If someone brings something that they care about in our schools, which is the idea of the call, the audience is that parents or other community members can say, hey, we don't like this that's going on with our schools, or hey, why don't we do this in our schools? That I would want to make sure that that was listed under relevant to the work of the board, which I think it would fit.
Yeah, it would be. Unrelated. Unrelated would be,
Non-school.
yeah, I can't think of an example right now, but it makes sense.
Dr. Barnes?
Yeah.
Is it appropriate to add in there, include commercial advertising solicitations or references to personnel-related incidents?
Well, looking again back at using the guidance we've got from good old Professor Bluestein, that was one of the things that she was saying that's very suspect. Members of the public do have a First Amendment right to complain about activities of the government and government employees.
No, I guess I mean, what happens if we're in the middle of a personnel-related issue and people come out to call of audience to talk about that issue? Doesn't that then create its own echo chamber that creates an issue?
That did, and I think she had an actual suggestion in there that, I think we have another point in
Oh, wow.
policy that we direct people to, raise their issues with you, members of the public complaints. And I believe it's actually more about board member relations with the public. But, that is the policy goal that we're trying to get at. Telling people, what you can and can't say in an open forum like that, a limited public forum, starts to become problematic. That's why look, I'd love to make it as tight and you can say as little as possible because it gets us out of there quicker, honestly, but.
Well, and it's not a concern we have that comes up very often. But just the board chair to know to direct personnel issues to me, not to the public is I'm not sure.
Perhaps that practice is the best way to do it. Again, to have the board chair out of their own initiative, just say, Mr. Smith, Ms. Smith, complaints about employees should.
Well,
because we don't act.
We have policy, we have procedure in place to direct individuals. I know, sitting on the board for this much time, it's definitely come up, and in the past, what has happened is the individuals who have named specific employees of the district have been paused and taken over, and I think they talked, it was when he was HR, and talked over on the side, because it is personnel, that's not something, so is that what you're
Well, I guess,
referencing?
and it's difficult for the board too, because the only employee they manage is me. And so I don't want to say it's cool to do it to me, but everyone else, they need to direct it to me because.
It's not our business. It's
Well,
not the
that's-
business of the board,
well,
actually.
yeah.
It's-
It is, but it also impacts our quasi-judicial, if anything comes
That would be
to,
my concern.
if anything comes to us and we have to rule on it, we then lose some of that objectivity in order to fairly rule on it. And so I don't know if I think that's a reasonable request to add that it can involve any personnel, because we do have procedures in place.
Devolve.
I would say pending personnel matters, because if it's, or not mention employees by name.
Is matters the right word there? I mean, I'm in agreement with the chair, and devolve is a nice word, but is it personnel cases? Personnel, it's not issues. Personnel matters, personnel, what's the word?
You could make it more, I'm trying to think of the word, not advisory, but a more language like personnel matters should be addressed to the superintendent I'm trying to think of a way to say this on the fly.
Reverse it.
If you want to get that in, personnel matters should be addressed to the superintendent.
Not in public comment.
Right. Rather than in public comment.
But it's not, is it matters or is it cases? What do you
I think
call it?
matters.
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 Okay.
And the reason I was saying it that way is, that's not an outright prohibition. That just tells people where the right place to go is. Do you get what I'm saying?
Right.
It's, because let's face it, if they're coming and talking in open this part, as you just pointed out, there's nothing the board can do about the vast majority of personnel matters because they're a superintendent issue. You only have one employee.
Add in concerns about the superintendent should be brought to the board chair.
That's,
Hang it all out there. No.
I mean, I don't want people to feel like there's no avenue for people who are dissatisfied with my work.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's part of why we have call to audience, for people to come up and say, hey, we don't like what we're seeing here.
Yeah.
And that's their right and their privilege under state statute to come and say that. But how do we protect the sanctity of the case so that we can remain objective?
Right.
What about individual personnel matters? Does individual then hone it down to where it's something they're looking at?
Can
But
I,
this
can I
also
offer
doesn't
food for
happen-
thought too? We get a lot of people who want to offer compliments to staff, and I think it's worth noting that
True.
they identify somebody when they show up. I think about being at board members when I was sitting over here at board meetings, and you'd have multiple people come up and talk about something positive regarding a staff member.
Mhm.
You're talking about concern where personnel matters.
Yes.
Not specifically identifying staff members, because if somebody wants to get up in public and talk about how incredible Ashley Sutton is, why would any of us stop them? You know what I mean?
Right.
And it happens frequently.
That would work.
Yeah.
And I'm the one who brought this up to start with. Is there a feeling that maybe if it's not broke, it doesn't need to be fixed? I don't know if that's a common
It's marginally broken.
occurrence anyway. Is
It's
it?
marginally broken.
I think, to your point, I think the board chair, if it strays into personnel issues, has the ability to say, kind of cut that off and say, we cannot, we can't hear prejudicial information about personnel matters that we might have to rely on, have to be able to rule on later.
But do we want to codify it?
What
Ms.
about
Bradford?
this? What about this? What if we leave what's there and we add Dr. Morgan's suggestion, concerns about personnel matters, send it to the board and let 7 people vote on it?
Okay, so I'll make the motion. I move that we add concerns regarding personnel matters should be directed to the superintendent and not addressed during public comment under direct comments to the board chair. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 3-0, and then I'm going to move that we send this forward to the board.
Second.
I'll second. Whatever.
All right, any discussion?
This is a really good piece, by the way, sir. Thank you.
Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That passes 3-0. And
We
then
done?
the last one, hopefully is short, sweet. 2340, parliamentary procedures. During our board retreat, we had some training on Robert's Rules, and one of the things that came up was when motions require a second and when they don't. And so I asked our attorney to add some verbiage to say, notwithstanding the exception for small boards contained in Robert's Rules, motions shall generally require a second.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Ms.
Move
Bradford.
to adopt as is.
Is there a second?
I will second it for the sake of discussion.
Perfect.
I'm concerned about the word generally. Just any time we put in
Okay.
a wiggle room, right, I think we need to determine when that is, because we don't know.
There are some motions that don't require a
Correct.
second, just as a matter of course, and I couldn't remember that right off the top of my head. The small board exception is section 4.9, note 7 in the new Robert's Rules. So whoever caught that was correct, but generally speaking, you don't need.
It's a good
Yeah.
call.
Orders of the day doesn't need a second.
I got the bridge one. Which one?
Enforce rules doesn't need a second. Avoid main motion doesn't need a second. demand rising vote, parliamentary law question, request information. There are quite a few that don't need a second.
We generally don't use some of those. We have a smaller.
What's interesting is when you dig into it, the ones that don't need debate and can't be amended, that's fascinating.
My question is simply whether or not we need, or when it says generally shall not require, perhaps we could say, except in cases codified in Robert's Rules already, right? Because there are certain motions that do not require.
Well, that was the idea I was trying to get across without making the,
A long
Extensively
sentence.
long
Exactly.
sentence.
And again, I don't know that this is going to become a problem. I just, anytime you put something in, I want it to be clear. I like, want to change it, it does make it just a tiny bit longer to say, small boards contained in Robert rules, except those already specified in Robert's rules.
Well, can I offer a suggestion? Notwithstanding the exceptions already contained in Robert's rules. Stick it right there, for small boards. What, it already says that, contained in Robert's rules. It says that. You might want to rearrange that sentence, but it says it. Except the exception that small boards contained in Robert's rules. It says it right there. I think that's what the point you're trying to get across, is it
No,
not?
notwithstanding means,
Two different things.
yeah, the small board exception
Oh,
says
true,
that
true,
we
true,
don't
true.
need the second, but because one procedurally and over the course of time, we've always done seconds, and there are some that do require seconds, we're wanting to maintain that generally
True.
requiring it.
What if you made it say exceptions, plural, strike for small boards? Would that then solve your problem? Exceptions contained in Robert's Rules of Order. Do you need small boards mentioned?
that would catch too many.
Okay.
That would catch the things that you don't need a second on if we said it that way.
Okay.
I was trying to call, just to say, we're not going to use the small board exception, for lack of a second.
Oh,
I'm just trying to, I was
That's
just
what
trying to address that
notwithstanding means.
one minor issue.
Yep.
interesting.
So, Dr. Merrick, is there anything that you would want to change?
Notwithstanding the exceptions for small boards contained in Robert's rules, motions shall not require a second unless specifically codified.
No, we're wanting
Now
to
you're opening
require.
Back up the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I'm not familiar with which motions do not require it.
Will you pass that around? It's a quick glance. Just run down the column where it says seconds.
Got it. And if there's, I don't want to have to list them all.
Right, because I think that there are.
Well, there's more there. Those are just the main ones, so.
There's quite a few, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to list them all with.
So I understand, and if it's not broken, don't fix it. Let's try this, and if it turns out that there's an issue later, then
Yeah, I think we just keep doing what we're doing.
Understanding, with everyone understanding what we're trying to do right there, I think that should inform how the chair rolls on
True.
any issues, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yep.
All right.
the chair can certainly pull out that chart and say, well, according to this, it does not need, or it does need, or et cetera. Yep.
Oh, somebody will.
All right, so the motion is to move 2340 onto the board. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? That passes 3-0.
I'm moved to adjourn.
No, she's got to list what moves on.
So just
We're gonna
so
fill
for
out
your,
this
for
chart.
your chart
Dr.
that you
Merritt,
have,
we're going to fill out this chart.
this is, so as of right now, I have existing policies for amendment with no changes, 2300 and 2340. Existing policies with changes, 2230 and 2310. All right?
2230
And
2310.
2310.
and 2310.
All right. There's a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed?
It passes 2-1. We're adjourned.